This is the first video to highlight the data visualizations that were created as a part of the sentiment analysis and topic modeling work around the survey responses that were collected over a 10-year time frame on webinars and workshops provided by the Evaluate Center. So this video is going to highlight what we call the Explorer or Navigator tool that allows you to quickly analyze and review all of the responses that were collected in the database during this 10-year time frame. So I'm going to quickly go over the different elements on this data visualization and then show you how you can use the filters and interactivity to help to answer some ad hoc questions. So at the top, we have a section of filters that allow for filtering of the results. We'll highlight those in a couple of minutes on how to use it. The top section, or the first table, is a categorization of the different responses by the different topic groups that were assigned. So we have, for example, physical and technology characteristics. We have 276 phrases that are related around technology characteristics with an average sentiment of around 0.76 for those 276 phrases. Well, what does this average sentiment actually mean? Well, on a scale, a neutral sentiment would be around 1. That would be a response that's neither negative nor positive. As you go below 1, in this case 0.76, this would highlight that most of the responses in this category are more highly negative than they are positive. As you get to 1 and above, you start to move into phrases that are more positive in their responses. And we'll show you how that's charted down here in the opinion phrase plot or scatter plot. Each one of the dots that is shown in this scatter plot is an opinion phrase. And you can actually see the opinion phrase itself if you mouse over the particular dot. So this one says, I think that the webinar spent too much time talking about general considerations. You can see that kind of in the middle section there. And you can also see the topic groups that were referenced as a part of that response. So this one talks about presentation design and presentation artifacts. So the fact that the webinar spent too much time was developed around the presentation design being too long. And then the artifacts would be the evaluation plans and specific examples that would have been a part of the artifacts themselves. You can also see some metadata that's associated to this particular response. You can see how many words are in the response, what the sentiment value is, in this case 0.701. You can see the unique identifier of that opinion phrase. You can see which session that it came from or was collected for, and the question that this response was for. In this particular case, this question was what aspect of this session needs the most improvement, and this individual wrote this particular phrase. Now you can see there's an X and Y plot that each one of these scatter plots or dots are aligned to. The y-axis is the amount of words that are in the opinion phrase. So obviously the higher that it is on the y-axis, the more words. So you can see as I mouse over this one, quite a bit of words. And as I move down here, longer breaks, some longer. So it's just 1 or 2 words as you move down. And on the x-axis is the sentiment itself. So these items that are in the green that are further over to the right are higher sentiment, and those that are over to the left are lower. And you can see that represented in a histogram on the bottom. A majority of the responses are actually in this around 1 to a little bit above 1. And you can see the distribution of the more positive and negative phrases. You'll see a histogram also of the amount of words. And you can see for the most part, the responses are in the lower category here. There's many more responses that are just a few words rather than those that are quite a bit of words that are in the response. And then on the right-hand side, there's an actual table of every single response. So this is sorted from the highest sentiment, so the most positive, to the most negative values. So these are the responses of every single item on the list. Now, this data visualization is very interactive, so it helps me to answer questions that I might have about this large selection of data. For example, when we started, we talked about this physical and technology characteristics and that there were 276 phrases in this category. If I select on 276, it is going to use that as a filter. And now I'm only seeing those responses that are related around technology. Now you can see as I mouse over a response, you may see responses that are associated to multiple different topic groups. Actually, many of these responses are talking about multiple different topics. But when I selected on the physical and technology characteristics, it ensures that all of these will at least have technology as one of the response topic groups that they're associated with. Now, when I selected on this 276, it filtered all of these responses. It also filtered these responses in the table too. So these are also only related around technology. Now, this is further interactive in the fact that I can draw or drag a box around the responses and see only those that are the most highly positive. So as I did that, you can see it changed the distribution down here, and it also filtered to just these particular responses. Now, a question that somebody might have as they look at this data is, what are the drivers of the technology responses? What are some particular aspects? Well, as I look over here on some of these responses, I see that the word Blackboard is used a couple times. Well, that may mean that there's something around this Blackboard feature. So I can come over to this text box and I can type in Blackboard as a keyword. And when I hit enter, it will again apply a filter where I'm seeing only those responses that have the word Blackboard contained within them. And again, I can select these 3 negative responses and see only those that are negative around Blackboard, so I can read kind of what's driving that. And then down here, these are the positive ones, and I can also select those and view the presentation components around the Blackboard element by selecting those. Now, how do I remove a filter? Well, if I've drawn a box around these items, I can just click in this area and it releases that filter. Anywhere that I click releases it. Now you can see it still has the technology filter and the Blackboard filter, but if I click the X, it releases Blackboard, so I'm just back to technology responses. And when I click on this 276, it releases that filter also. Now I can also filter on sentiment score. So if I only want to see the most highly positive responses, I can use the filter to do that. If I want to see only the most negative responses, I can also do that. If I'm interested in only those negative responses with a very high word count, I can also use word count to just highlight those that have the most information-rich responses. So they provide me with more words, more context for me to analyze. So this is all interactive at the top. As you move these sliders, it's going to filter these results for you. Now you might also be interested in filtering based on a time component. And if I select this filter on date of session, I can actually move and show only those responses collected in the last perhaps year and a half. I can expand it out to any kind of time frame and be able to identify those responses. I can also, if I just select on the date, I can also use this little slider box to be a little bit more precise in the dates that I want to select in my filter. And again, you can release these filters by simply moving the slider back and being able to open up that response. And finally, there is a selection over here where you can filter just those responses that were collected from workshops or those that were connected from webinars. And you can easily filter back and forth between those 2 different categories. So this hopefully is a demonstration on how you can come into this particular tool and with a question about what's driving technology responses, maybe about a component like the Blackboard element, what's driving the satisfaction, dissatisfaction. It allows you to analyze these thousands and thousands of responses that were collected, easily classify them, be able to filter down really quickly, and get some insight, gain insight in this larger data set to make improvements in the presentation of webinars and workshops. This is the first video that's showing the Explorer tool. The second video is going to go over the individual workshop analysis. That's more of a scorecard visualization for the individual workshops.